As we ended part 1, students were asked to stop, conduct some pre-writing strategies, which included a 5-minute free write on the essay assignment. You were meant to be able to pull gems of good information, then try listing with that, and possibly going back and free writing again on that good information. This particular step of the writing process cannot be overemphasized. It really is where students are able to kind of wrap their head around the actual essay assignment itself, pull their good ideas in order to be able to write. Because remember, in academic writing, as you are developing and going through your English coursework, what you do for mind class and then what you do beyond mind class really is looking for students to think. Professors are not necessarily looking for students to regurgitate information, but looking to see how students are thinking about the topic that's been presented to them and what their view. So the next part that we're going to look at is going to be thesis statements. Developing your own point of view, an argument, or a thesis for the essay, again, it really grows out of those pre-writing activities. Most writers significantly revise their thesis statement several times throughout the writing process, so don't get stuck in your own writing if you can't get the thesis statement perfect. Writing a good working thesis, and know that you can revise it as you go along. So, what exactly is a thesis statement? The thesis is the central claim of your essay. It's the overall point you want to make. The thesis statement is the answer to the question posed by the assignment. So the ability to be able to understand your essay assignment, go through those pre-writing activities, and then going back into the thesis statement so that you can answer those questions, it is so important. The thesis statement is usually going to be one sentence long in early college papers, but as you develop and evolve your writing projects when you go through your English classes, your thesis statement is going to continue to grow too. However, we're going to start from some point. So let me kind of give you some general ideas of what a thesis statement is outside of that answer to the question. So here, the thesis statement, it responds directly to the assignment. It's going to make a claim about the topic. It's not merely a restatement of the topic. It's where you're putting your point of view without necessarily saying I, we, or you. It's going to develop a complete idea about what the writer believes about the topic, as well as why he or she believes that. Are written as statements. I really tell students to really shy away from using a thesis statement that's a question. You're meant in your own academic writing, you were given a question to answer for your essay. It does not seem plausible that you turn around and present a question to your reader. One question is not answered by another question. Make sure that your thesis statement is very clearly worded. Again, as your thesis statement is evolved and changed when you go through your drafts and your ideas, as you outline your ideas, go to a rough draft, and then go to a final draft, it's going to become more clear. And you should always keep in mind that it should continue to evolve. And an adequate thesis statement will evolve. Furthermore, your thesis statement should not be too broad. Means it shouldn't have so much information inside of that one sentence that you're really actually not answering the question. And neither should it be so narrow and so specific that you can't extend or elaborate any further. And last, don't include words such as I, we, or in this essay, I will do this. It's not appropriate for college level writing. And furthermore, we really want to stick to a third person writing. So let's go back to the assignment that you've been asked to look at. Here's the prompt again, and I've still got it in the red as the background information, the underlined area is the question stem, and then remember in the blue, this is what you've been asked to do, the instructor's expectations. So usually that's going to be, how to type it and so forth like that. So really, honestly, there are 2 tasks that you've been asked to do, and that's identify the most important factors that create wealth and financial stability, and explain why those are important. So here, as we're going to formulate and start creating our first attempt at a thesis, let's go back into our pre-writing pieces and possibly be able to pick out some information. Maybe what you identified already were important factors that created wealth and financial stability. So I've actually listed just one example here. I said a high level of education. That's an important factor that creates wealth and financial stability. I strongly advise you to stop here for just a moment, and list 3 other important factors that create wealth and financial stability. Once you have that complete, then I want you to pick 3 of those factors that are the most important. We want to be able to have 3 of them because when we start going into our actual body paragraphs and writing that rough draft body paragraphs, you're going to have 3 body paragraphs that you're going to create. All right, and so you're going to need those 3 factors to pull into our main points for those body paragraphs. So here, let's just stop. We'll take care of this, and then we'll move forward. So based off of being able to identify important factors that help create wealth and financial stability, and then we go into the 3 of what we as a writer, what we feel are the 3 most important pieces, that has answered one of those tasks inside of the essay assignment that you've been asked to do. So that's only part 1. The second part is, now that you've identified what you feel are important factors to create wealth and financial stability, you then need to state, the second part. Why are these the most important factors? So what you need to be able to do is extend what you've already done. Possibly be writing right next to those 3 important factors that you selected, and be able to put this information. Why are they important? After you've been able to kind of jot down a few ideas of why you feel like these 3 factors are important that you have selected, we need to go ahead and start formulating and pushing together the thesis statement. So let's look at the essay prompt again, and we'll see what we can do to be able to create our thesis statement. So it says, write an essay in which you identify what you think are the most important factors that create wealth and financial stability, and explain how and why they are important in helping Americans achieve financial stability. So since you're answering a question, I strongly encourage students, if you're answering a question, you need to be able to take some of the wording that's in that question to build your thesis statement. So here's an example. Let's say that I identified a high level of education. Let's say that I identified money habits as well as inheritance as my 3 most important factors. And I give you these examples for you to be able to think about. I don't necessarily want you choosing the exact same important factors. I could see one matching, but not necessarily all of them. This is meant for you to be able to write. And so then I'm going to have my reasons of why. Why do I think that inheritance, money habits, as well as a high level of education are very important? So I'm going to jot down some notes on the side. So as I go into making a working thesis, it's not going to be perfect. This is something that we're just we're free writing. So I might put the ability for Americans to achieve financial stability rely on inheritance, money habits, and a high level of education, which are needed in order to promote stability across the United States. This is a very rough working thesis statement, and I'm just coming up with this off the top of my head. But do you see how I'm trying to take the words inside of the actual writing prompt and be able to turn around and put that into my actual thesis? Again, that's very rough. I'm going to clean that up as I'm going into later on into my outlining ideas, and then furthermore, I'm going to go into my rough draft. I'll clean it up to make sure it sounds more plausible as I go along, because I don't want it to be too long. I want to make sure it has good grammar. I don't want to put I or me or in this essay I'm going to do. I want to be able to follow the guidelines that are going to be on slide 11. So again, we're going to have periodic stops as we're doing this particular part 2 session. I want you to be able to stop here, look at those 3 important factors, look what you jotted down for why, look at what the question stem here is, and I want you to be able to go ahead and start writing a working thesis statement. This working thesis is going to be the central point of the entire essay that you're going to write. So let's stop and let's do that. Next, we're going to go into outlining our ideas. Once we have a working thesis, we really need to be able to start sketching out an outline to help us be able to sort out our ideas. So writers often organize their ideas in many different ways. So being able to do that, I strongly suggest that students first, you start jotting down your ideas. Well, what did you say were your 3 most important factors that create wealth and financial stability for Americans? All right, so I mentioned some just a few moments ago, and you've already written these down. So underneath that information, you need to start putting, what facts or statistics, what evidence and proof are you putting underneath those main points, those 3 that you have already identified? What information are you putting under there to back up or support what you're saying for your thesis statement? You're telling me these important factors that you've already written down, that they're the most important factors to create wealth and financial stability. Well, why? What evidence, what data, what examples are you putting behind that information? So let's start jotting down some information. You don't have to use necessarily full written out sentences. You can free write underneath each of these particular main points that you have here. You might put a full sentence. You might just put keywords or phrases. And after you've done that, then you need to go back and examine the list of ideas that you put in. So you've got your main idea, the 3 important factors that are going to be the bulk of your essay, because you've got 3 of them. So that means 3 body paragraphs. I haven't even talked about the introduction or the conclusion yet. I'm just talking about the 3 body paragraphs for right now, okay? And so at this point, you got to go back and examine those and look at the meat of the information you put underneath there that's telling me why you're saying these are the most important reasons and what support you're giving for those. Go back and look at those. Is the information that you put underneath there, do you need to add more detail? Are you clear enough for the way that you're outlining your information? You've got to have some roadmap to get you where you need to go before we start going into further information. And last, before we go into too much information about the generating, evidence for our thesis and so forth, as we go more into that, look at the 3 important factors that you said. You need to order them what you feel is most important to the least important idea. So it's not to say that they're all not important ideas, because that's what we had to identify, but you have to be able to turn around and say, well, I really think that a high level of education is, out of all of these 3 factors that I identified, it's the most important. Americans cannot create, wealth and financial stability without having a high quality and high level of education. So that would probably be my first major point that I'm going to talk about. The second one, I could say, in order for Americans to have, wealth and create financial stability, they've got to have some inheritance from family prior to. That really helps them to be able to set the foundation and move forward, and then so forth and so forth. And all of this is ordered based off of what you feel is most important. This is where your assertiveness of language and your ability for writing and organization really comes in to show me what you feel is most important. So again, let's stop. We've done so much already. We've identified our 3 main factors. We've kind of jotted down why we think that. We made a working thesis statement. Now we're outlining our ideas to kind of give more meat up underneath those pieces of what we said was so important. We've examined it, and then now we are ordering what we feel is most important. So we'll stop here, and let's take care of that step. So a few moments ago when we were looking at outlining our ideas, we talked about evidence and support. Again, you've got your working thesis, you've got some idea of the points you intend to include in your paper, and we did in the last step for outlining, we put some information, even keywords and phrases, some pieces to be able to support and prove what we say is most important to least important. Here, my strongest suggestion is the 2 readings that you've done this week, the wealth gaps rise to record highs between different ethnic groups, and then also making it in the U.S. There are fabulous pieces of information in there to be able to go back and support what you feel are important factors. And you need to be able to use quotations, if possible, data that's available. This is how you prove an argument, because you're telling me through your working thesis, these are the most important pieces. These are why they're so important. All right, so as you're writing your body paragraphs, you need examples and evidence to support that. So, as I've said, review your pre-writing strategies to maybe gather the quotes or paraphrase information that you've already done. Your evidence, it must support what you've said are the major points, those 3 important factors when you are asked to identify them. Whatever evidence that you do choose, you've got to be able to make sure that it supports the main point, and further, does that evidence in turn support the thesis statement? Because everything goes back to that thesis statement, because the thesis statement is a central point. So remember, you might include examples, facts with numbers, which is statistics, and brief stories which support, and these are called anecdotes. So writers are suggested to add their evidence and support to the outline of ideas. This will really help you to be able to keep organization for the rough draft as we start coming into that here in just a moment. That outline really is the key to keeping you focused and really strongly pushing forward. Many times as writers start just typing on a computer and they don't have an outline, they become confused of why did I start writing this? What was I going to put in here? But by having even just a very briefly jotted down rough outline, nobody said it had to be pretty, having this information really helps students have a map and a guide to be able to write effectively. The more evolved that your writing becomes as you go into my class, go into your English classes and push forward into other writing pieces, it's not to say that you're going to lose some of that need to do an outline. It will just become more brief because your brain is becoming acclimated into working in some type of structure instead of just pulling bits and pieces everywhere that you can think of and making it unfortunately a disorganized conglomerate of information. We want it to be able to work in the structure of the essay format, which is, of course, you have your introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and then you've got your conclusion. So now that we have that particular outline going, and we've already, of course, had our working thesis, we've outlined our ideas for our major points, we've kind of gone back in and identified, well, what are we going to use for our evidence to be able to support these major points? We need to specifically, let's focus for just a moment on those body paragraphs, okay? Where we have the main points. We know what evidence we're going to use to be able to support those main points, which of course relate to the thesis. Let's talk about a topic sentence. Each paragraph should develop one idea or make clear a point in support of the thesis. Well, we've already done that. Remember, we identified 3 important factors which help create wealth and financial stability. We jotted down kind of on the side why it did that. All right, so we're developing, let's look at, body paragraph 1, whatever we said was the most important. So we're going to focus on that. And remember, I gave you the example that I said that a high quality level of education is the most important. So now I'm going to be able to develop that idea. I jotted down a couple of minutes ago my evidence that I was going to use. I went back to my sources for the articles so I could pull in some of that information. So now what I want to be able to do is that I need to be able to have that main idea in the form of a sentence, and that is called a topic sentence. You can really think of a topic sentence almost like a mini thesis. It's usually a claim and tells the reader what to expect of the paragraph. Topic sentences are really so important because they help guide the reader through your essay. And so a topic sentence is going to do two things. It's going to be the topic of the paragraph. So it's going to be that most important main factor that I just said, the high quality of education, because I said that was the most important, so that's what I'm choosing for one of my paragraphs. The second point is that it is going to be the point of the paragraph will make about that topic in support of the thesis. Well, remember, as I look back at my thesis and kind of my working thesis that I've created, what I've done is I've said that a high quality of education is very important for Americans to create financial wealth. To create wealth and financial stability. And so with that being said, it's important for all Americans across the United States. So I have to keep kind of what's going on, my main point, kind of connected to what's going on for the thesis. So again, it goes back to that mini thesis, but it really only belongs to that body paragraph. So in academic writing, most topic sentences are generally the first sentence of each paragraph, so they indicate to the reader what point the paragraph will make. So for college writing, really we want to kind of stick with this trend. So what I want you to do is I want you to just stop for a moment. Let's take a look at the outline of ideas that we've done so far, because we've done a whole lot since we started the second part. And I want you to create a structured sentence that will be the topic sentence for each body paragraph, because you're going to have three. Remember, we've got 3 points that go back to support what we said were the most important factors. We had some jotted out ideas of why were they so important for Americans to create wealth and financial stability. Then we also went into that support and evidence. And now we're creating that topic sentence that will guide our reader of what that paragraph is about. So this is just rough. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't get stuck on your words. But let's stop for a moment and create a topic sentence for each of those body paragraphs in that jotted down outline that we've been working on. So here are some examples of writing a topic sentence. All right, so remember, these is, I said, my high level of education or high quality level of education. It was my most important factor because we outlined it and I chose the order. So my first body paragraph is going to be primarily about this, and I put some evidence underneath there, and I went back to my articles because I use that information. I want to really limit what I pull from my articles because I want to see how my students think or how I can think. So here's a sample topic sentence of what I've done. I put, having a high level of education is a must when it comes to having good financial stability. And then I would go on to support it by possibly saying a good education to help secure a high-paying career for a strong financial future. So you can see that my topic sentence is going to be first, and these pieces of supporting evidence are going to be underneath it. I'll probably have to write a little bit better for my supporting details to make sure that it's clearly stated and clearly worded for my evidence once I start going into my rough draft. But I think my sample topic sentence for that one body paragraph that I've been looking at, because obviously I will go into the second most important factor and then the third most important factor as you're going to continue writing here. But I mean, this is pretty good. I think it gives me a good place to start, and I know how that first body paragraph is going to write, and once you usually start getting writing, it's usually a lot easier. So far, we've done a lot of information. We have enacted pre-writing strategies. These good ideas were used for our essay assignment. We've created a working thesis statement which answers, what is being asked of us for the essay. We've outlined multiple body paragraphs, including, idea and point and evidence to support that, main idea or point. And then we've made sure all of that has a relationship with our thesis statement. And last, we just wrote a topic sentence for each of those 3 body paragraphs that you're going to write, okay? So what we're going to do, we're still just focusing on those 3 body paragraphs. We haven't talked about the introduction and we haven't talked about the conclusion paragraph. We're just focusing on those 3 body paragraphs. So what we're going to do is you're going to write an initial rough draft to focus on the body paragraphs only. I need you to solidify these 3 parts or these 3 paragraphs because honestly it's the meat of this essay. It is the meat that answers the question that you put up in the thesis statement, and it goes further from there. So just on a lighter note, many students are like, how do I write that first rough draft? And you truly do. You write it 1 word at a time. And so just, we've done so much on our outline, so let's just get moving forward. Let's write. Introductions set the tone for your essay right away, and conclusions, they leave a lasting impression. So as you wrote for your rough draft just a moment ago, we just focused on those body paragraphs. So as we're looking at the introduction, really you need to include the following things. So you need to have 1 or 2 sentences that hook your reader. Get him or her interested in your topic. The hook could be a fact, it could be a quote that really stands out or gets to the heart of the issue. A second piece is you need to be able to have a statement about the focus topic of the essay. So the focus topic of the essay is about creating wealth and financial stability. So you need to be able to have some statement about that. Further, you need some background information on your topic so that your reader is able to have some information or some context of your essay. So I know that you just gave a statement about the focus of the entire topic for the essay, but this needs to be some information, perhaps something that you read inside of the articles that really gave you a background knowledge. We all came into the articles that we read with some information. We knew about wealth, we knew about some type of financial stability, so we expanded our knowledge on the topic itself by what we read. So maybe that background information or extended information that you put in your essay will be able to give the reader a bit more. And then the last sentence in your introduction needs to be an improved thesis statement. Now we've been working with a working thesis statement thus far. We kind of created a crude thesis statement, and I don't know whether or not you went back and you've been able to improve that as you go along. But at this point, we are beyond a rough draft. We've written those 3 paragraphs and we're working on that introduction in a rough draft. So we're just a step beyond the initial rough draft, and so you've got to be able to improve your thesis statement. So make sure, does it still fit with what you've done through the body paragraphs as you wrote that rough draft? Does it really follow along as you've hooked your reader in, given some background information, and then straight told the reader, this is what this essay is about. This is what we're writing about. So here's a rough sample introduction using the essay assignment that students, that you've been given. So money is something that's really important to everyone, especially in today's economy, where everyone needs to save to have future financial stability. For many people, money is never just money. It's a tool that accomplishes many of life's goals, like going to college, open up a business, go on a trip, buy a car, buy a house, and so on. Today, to have a good financial stability is very important because parents want to leave their children with good financial security. But for some parents, it's hard to achieve this goal because they don't have the same privileges that some other parents have. The key to create financial stability in America is to have a high level of education, good habits, and good financial literacy. Because in today's bad economy, people without good money habits can't compete with people who start off life with more money. So you can tell in this piece, you can tell what is their hook information, background information on the topic, and finally their thesis statement. You should also be able to tell that this is a working or rough draft introduction because there are several grammatical pieces that are inaccurate and some of the sentences don't sound entirely polished. But that's okay. This is where we need to be. This is what you've got to be working on in order to, you have to have something to improve as you are continuing to work. So let's stop, let's take a couple of minutes, and let's be able to work on that introduction with the pieces that you've been asked to do. If necessary, take a step backward in this presentation and be able to look at the key components that an introduction should include. The last part is the conclusion, and the conclusion usually is one paragraph long. It should sum up the paper and really leave the reader with some lasting thoughts. And when students sum up the paper, they really should think about, what were the main points that we covered in the body paragraphs, and then sum that up along with the thesis. And usually a very last sentence in that paragraph is students are to really leave the reader with something that they've learned and make that into a recommendation for the reader or possibly a suggestion about the overall topic itself. So here's an example, a rough sample conclusion. In order to create financial stability in America is to have a good education and good financial literacy, because otherwise we won't make it in today's economy, which by today it is still a disaster that will take years to overcome. Money is a big discussion in all countries, not only in America. So that's why learning to have good money habits, to have family discussions about money, have a good education, and having an inheritance can help you achieve financial stability for the future, since we don't know what the future holds for us. It's better to be well informed and have money saved than to do nothing and regret it later. So you can see this is basically 3 sentences, so there are actually several run-on sentences in here, but again, it's a rough sample conclusion. There may be some information in there. I did see one piece of information that the student that was assigned this particular essay that they wrote, and they presented a brand new idea, like a main point in their conclusion. Don't do that. You only want to be able to give information of what you've already presented and supported in your essay. So again, we need to take some time. You've written your introduction. You've written the 3 body paragraphs, okay? So we're in this rough draft contextualized piece, and last we need to go into the conclusion paragraph. So let's stop and let's take care of this. Ultimately, we've come a long way since the beginning of this writing lesson, and you should have performed multiple writing actions which have really progressed your essay assignment. At this point, you should be complete with the rough draft. When you finish with your rough draft, students must make it a complete priority to ensure that their ideas, point of the body paragraphs, and subsequent evidence relate to their thesis statement. After students have finished their rough draft, they're suggested to allow at least 1 day before revising and editing for the final draft of the essay. Revising your essay, it really includes rereading to make sure that your ideas are clear and that you provided evidence. Does it sound logical? Does it make sense? And then further, you must make sure that you check for fragments. Are your sentences too long with run-on sentences, punctuation, spelling, and capitalization? These pieces are so important as you mold this essay from a rough draft into a final draft. So just an essay assignment recap. Here is the Wealth Gap assignment essay. These pieces are based upon the readings that you've done, the annotation of text, as well as the comprehension questions, what you've learned, the steps that we've walked through. Your final draft must be typed in Microsoft Word, double-spaced, and use Times New Roman 12-point font. If you have any questions or any concerns, please contact me by email. Thank you.